Hello, good people, and welcome to the Higher Living Podcast. This is episode 10, and today we have in studio with us Eunice Liefferink. Eunice is an incredibly interesting person. She runs an HR consulting business, and her business is very multifaceted in terms of the way that it offers HR consulting services out to the market in the hope of empowering the hearts and the minds of people and leaders so that they can run their businesses more effectively and ultimately deliver greater results to their clients. Now, the Eunice's story is also one that's quite interesting, and why I find it interesting is because she's recently made the transition from leaving her corporate job and venturing out as an entrepreneur. So Eunice, I'm not going to steal any more of your thunder. Welcome to the Higher Living Podcast. It's a privilege to have you on my show. How are you doing this afternoon?
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for that introduction. I'm good. I'm well, thanks. And I feel very grateful for being able to spend this time with you. So thank you for the invite.
Pleasure. So Eunice, I've given a brief introduction into, what it is that you do. But if we take a few steps back, can you give us a bit of an overview of who Eunice Liefferink is? What constitutes your life, where you come from, and just a bit of a background on yourself, so that we have some appreciation of who you are.
Great, thanks. So, I think just to start with the roots, because I think those are important, and they've formed a lot of who I am. So there's some great humble beginnings, and when I tell people this, they often are quite amazed that I come from a very small mining town in the Free State, and that's where I grew up. So my path began in the Free State in Welkom, and I basically did my schooling there, and then I went on to. I actually didn't study after school. I didn't have the opportunity to study after school, so I started working at a very young age, and in fact, it was. I started working before the legal age. I started working at 15. I started waitressing at a restaurant in Welkom, which was one of the well-known restaurants. And I just decided, you know what, this is what I'm going to do, because I've always been exceptionally independent as an individual. And I loved engaging with people, and I loved serving people. So, as you know, waitressing is all about that. And it taught me some really good lessons very early on in life, which was, how to put money away, how to save, and how to create financial independence for yourself. And fast forward sort of maybe 20 odd years or so. I've traveled, I've been overseas, I've worked overseas, and I had a corporate career for over 20 years in various corporates, probably for about 7 or 8 years at a time. And I was just really privileged to work with some amazing people earlier on in my career that mentored me, that developed me, that opened doors for me. And I found myself in leadership positions very early on in my life. So at the age of 25, I was leading a team of young graduates, and I was leading a sales team in particular. And I thought I knew how to lead people, but I was very green and very young and immature at that age. So I think the path to where I am now started there in terms of understanding what motivates people. How do you influence people to contribute in a way that they want to, not because it's a job and they have to. So I was exposed to a number of leadership programs at that point in my life, and I applied them, and I never thought I would work for myself, right? So it was never a thing that I thought of. I was very happy in corporate. I loved the structure. I loved the people that I reported into, and it just worked. But there was always something that was pushing me towards advancements in my career. So one of the key principles in my life is development and growth. And I don't, as much as a comfort zone is great. Somehow I find myself, moving into change all the time. I also had my first daughter, and I've got two daughters. I've got two girls, and I say that my first one is my bonus child. Okay, so she's the oldest one, and my second one is my biological child. And I had her quite later on in my life, which kind of rocked my world completely, because I literally went from being very structured to have, in terms of having loads of time and things just working really well, and having my oldest daughter pop through 1 week on, 1 week off, and it worked, to literally my life being thrown into chaos with this little one. And just finding it really difficult to juggle all the pieces. So I had her when I was still in my corporate role, and that was the last role that I had. And at some point I decided, it's time to take this jump. And I decided to go ahead and start my own company, because I felt that there was a ceiling within corporate that limited my ability to impact people and to enable people, and specifically leaders. I think there's a calling, that some people have to help, young children, or to help whoever it is, whatever, in the medical sector. I have a calling to help leaders. I have a real passion for that, because I think that your life is literally transformed by the leader that you report into. They give you opportunities, and they can have an impact on your family, and that in turn has an impact on the community. So that's my way of making a difference and giving back.
Okay.
So that's a very long introduction, but I hope that gives you a little bit of color in terms of who and where I come from, who I am and where I come from.
No, that's perfect. And it's an interesting conversation, because I think a lot of people in corporate do enjoy the people, they do enjoy the structures, they do enjoy the culture, but a lot of people also hit this glass ceiling. And when they get to that point, it's sometimes very scary to leave the comfort that they know in terms of, even just the salary that they get at the end of the month, and leave that comfort to go and venture out into the deep blue sea and take that, as they say, to take that leap of faith and that jump and to sink or swim. Was that quite a hard decision for you to make?
It was an exceptionally difficult decision for me to make. I grappled with the decision for a good 2 years. I thought 2 years prior to actually taking the jump, I thought I need to do something different, because I'm at a space now where it's very transactional, and it's just about doing what's required, and I needed to expand and grow, and I outgrew the company. So I think, and I just thought, well, I could go and look for another role, but it could be more of the same. And I think people that work within a corporate environment can relate, within any environment, in fact, is that there's a political landscape that you need to manage. There's always an agenda that you're serving that might not be your own agenda. It's an agenda that's the organization's objectives and an agenda which is completely fine. But I just feel that at some point you become underutilized. So I grappled with that decision for a good 2 years, and I decided, in my structured way, I thought, well, I'm gonna make sure that if I take this jump and if I take this leap, that I'm covered, that I've got work lined up. And so I did. And I managed to secure work for 6 months. And I thought, okay, fantastic. This is my lifeboat. I'm going to do this. I've got work for 6 months. I've got a couple of, rands saved, so that if anything goes wrong, that I'm okay for the next year. And if it doesn't work, well, then I can always go back and look for a job, right?
Yeah, yes. I mean, and that's how it goes. And you end up finding this little piece of work, and I assume that you were the person doing the work, so you hadn't
Yes.
employed anybody yet, and
Yes.
and you've got the safety net. The safety net, I assume, is not debt based, so it's money that you've actually saved, which is the right sequence of steps, and those are the things that give you comfort in the time of stress, because it is very stressful going through a process such as this, because like you've said, you've also got a family, you've also got commitments, and the impact of your decisions affects many people. So it's definitely not easy. So how long have you been running your business, EUCAN Consulting, for at the moment?
So I literally started in February 2020. So
just before COVID.
Just before COVID.
Well, what a wonderful timing.
Just before COVID, exactly. And you know what, Sean, it was the right time. People think, oh my word, disaster. And I think all my colleagues that, when COVID hit, all my colleagues, I could see them going, so you're going to be okay, because they would engage and they'd be like, this was obviously the worst decision that you made. But it was exactly the right timing, because had I waited an additional 3 months to resign and COVID hit, I would have been too scared to make that leap.
Yeah.
I would have been like, you know what, this has happened. People are losing their jobs. So it was the perfect time. And yes, the work that I'd lined up for 6 months came to a grinding halt. So I had a fantastic first month in terms of my new business and consulting. It was great. I was exceptionally busy, and I hit the ground running, literally. And in the second week of March, I then got a call from the consultancy business that I was supporting, and they just said, look, we're going to go into hard lockdown. All our clients are pulling back. We won't be able to honor the agreement. And so I had to face my worst fear, which was, I'm sitting now without a job. I willingly took this jump. I'm in my own business, and now I'm sitting without a job and without a paycheck. So yeah, that was definitely, it was definitely a time for me to let go and realize that I actually don't have control over everything, and that I actually just need to surrender and trust the process, and I need to put my head down, and I need to do what I'm able to do in that moment. Because if I wanted to try to control the outcome, I was going to be spending an enormous amount of energy on something that wasn't necessarily going to materialize.
Yeah, and you had no control over.
Nothing. Yeah. And I didn't know how long it was going to last, so I thought, okay, well, this is going to be a month or two, and then we're back on track.
Hey, it's funny, this notion of surrender comes up in all my podcasts, almost all my podcasts. And I think the reality of that is because everyone goes through challenges. And when you go through a challenge, the first thing that one wants to do is take control of the challenge. But it's actually the complete wrong thing to do. The best thing to do is let go. And did you find it difficult to let go at that point in time? Did you try everything in your power to control?
It was exceptionally challenging for me, because I was protected to a point. When you work for a corporate and you're part of a structure and you get a salary, it's a given. So on the 25th of the month, you get your salary, you get your paycheck. So I think that it was such a life-defining moment for me in terms of, this is not ideal, but you're going to get through this. And I think what I did is I then immersed myself in just, getting upskilled and using the time to increase my toolbox and I invested in further, development of myself. And I took up a few more courses, so I just, and I think I woke up on a daily basis feeling an enormous amount of anxiety, not knowing what the future holds. But I know, and I think that's, life has taught me that that's an emotion. So cognitively, I knew that this anxiety is an emotion and it will pass. And if I just keep focused on the process and not the outcome, things will start to come together. And I think part of the blessing that happened is that lockdown happened for everyone. So, at that time, and why I say that was a blessing is because the consultants that I then started working with during that time, their work also came to a halt. And what happened is we started to collaborate together. And I, as a result of that, I also learned an enormous amount from them, because they've been consulting and they've been doing this, for like 15 years, in terms of the leadership development. Now, whilst I was very passionate about leadership development, my exposure was like on the other side. It was on the corporate side. It wasn't actually being in front of a classroom of 20 delegates and reading the room and facilitating the thinking. And so I had the privilege, because of COVID, to be partnered with some really amazing facilitators that have taught me an enormous amount. And so I look back and I go, I wouldn't change anything, because I know that when there's tough times, it's okay. It happens. Life is about challenges. It means that you're alive. If you've got challenges, then that means you're living. If you have no challenges, well then, you're either not getting up or you're not here anymore. So it's given me an enormous amount of resilience. Just an ability to go, okay, so that wasn't great. What did I learn from it? What can I do better? What do I need to focus on? And I think that's very much what an entrepreneur needs. You need to be able to, to focus on the next step and not dwell in like the shoulds. Oh my word, I should have never resigned, or I should have never, shouldn't have taken this decision, and I should have just held on.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's also, life gives you what you need, not what you necessarily want, in my experience. So
yes.
It's amazing that life put you in that situation, but it changed your conversation with the consultancy that you were working with. And it actually created more scalability and sustainability for that relationship, if I hear it right.
Yes.
And it's given you more traction in terms of your bigger business intent, by putting you through that hardship and by putting you through that anxiety and all of those emotions. So it's an amazing, surrender is an amazing concept. And I love what you say about anxiety and emotions, and the fact that one needs to just see it as an emotion and not get pulled into it.
Yeah.
And when one sees it as an emotion, it sort of detaches the power that it has over one, so that you can actually just carry on doing what you need to do and just trusting that this emotion will go away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think all too often we can get hooked by the emotions that we feel, and we think that's us. That, okay, I feel happy, and so I am happy. Or I'm feeling frustrated, and so I am frustrated. You are so much more than that. And I think, it's just it was an opportunity to transcend that. It was an opportunity to become a lot better as an individual, and, as I won't say an employee, because I also crossed that threshold at some point, because, for a good year, I was like toying with the idea of going back into corporate and wanting that safety and that security blanket. And at some point, I crossed over to that, I crossed over to the other side. And now, for me, it's, I will never go back to working into a corporate. I don't want to say never, never say never, but I love what I do. And the amount of growth that I've had as an individual has been phenomenal. And it's like daily. I don't think you stop growing, because there's no cap on it. you're the one that dictates the cap of your learning and your growth and the, what you try and what you do. And your time is based on how you plan it. So yes, your clients also, you need to deliver, and you need to make sure that you're there. But there's a large part where you can look at your week and your month, and you can allocate time to do different things, that grow your business as well, and that grow you as a person.
Yeah, that's so true. And tell me, your approach to life sounds so spiritual. Are you quite a spiritual thinker? Do you explore spirituality? What drives this?
Oh, okay. So that's a good question. I think that I am a naturally spiritual person. So I am, Christian in terms of background, but I won't say that I practice. I say Christianity. It's more about having a relationship with God and a higher power. And I've also got to a point in my life where I do question, some of the things. But I think for me, it's about, it is about being grateful for what you've been given in life. And I think, my background, my mom was very religious, whereas my dad was not. He had different opinions, but I grew up in quite a conservative home. And so even from the age of as far as I can remember, it was always about having a relationship with that higher source and tapping into that wisdom. And so the practices are prayer but I like to keep my mind open, because I think early on in my life it was very black and white. It was very much, this is the right way, and if it's not this way, then it's wrong. But I've actually opened my mind up to different practices, and I appreciate specifically people that are kind. I think for me it starts with what sits in your heart. What's your deeper motive, and what are you doing? What is it that you're doing these things for? So all this, I listen to a couple of speakers and motivational speakers, and I love listening to audiobooks and so forth. And one of the common threads that they have, which is a wonderful principle to live by, is that whatever you do it with the deeper motive to serve others. Don't do it to look good or to perform, because then what happens is you pull in that anxiety of performance and you're actually not in flow. But if your deeper motive is, I'm here to serve you in the best possible way that I can, you're going to be successful. So that resonates very highly with me. So there's no particular spiritual practices that I follow, but there is a higher being that I feel I'm grateful towards, and for me that's God. And on a daily basis, when I wake up, the first thing that I do is I pray. I'm in bed and my eyes are still closed, and I pray and I say thank you, because when I don't, it's almost like my day doesn't really go well. And I just find that so many things in life can happen, and so many things do happen to people, and here I am in my warm, beautiful bed, and my family's safe, and everybody is well, and I've just got so much to be thankful for. And it puts you in a space of immense gratitude and awe that the universe works and it conspires for your benefit. Because look, I'm literally living proof of it. I started my business when COVID hit, and it's going exceptionally well, and it hasn't been as a result of sitting back and not doing anything, but I feel immensely blessed, and that I'm on the right path because I've connected myself to the higher purpose of enabling people. And it's not, for me, it's specifically leaders. I have a real passion, and that's awesome to do. And that just keeps me going.
No, I appreciate that, and I respect that, and I think it's a wonderful outlook to have in life. So let's talk about EUCAN Consulting for a bit. Tell me a bit about the business, and I can only imagine that you started the business with a specific intent, and over the last period that it's been in operation, it's probably morphed. So talk to me a bit about where it started, what was your original goals, and where you're at the moment, and what it is you offer.
So originally, EUCAN was just going to have a leadership arm to it, so leadership training and leadership transformation, because that was when I left corporate. I thought, I don't want to do what I've done for the last 10 years, but I can definitely leverage the knowledge. So I headed up HR for quite some time, and I was also the head of employee engagement for one of the corporates that I worked for. So I was always kind of pulled towards the culture, the culture transformation of any organization. And I thought, well, if I have my own business, this is what I want to do mostly. So that then evolved into some individual engagement with leaders and people that weren't necessarily leaders as well. I came across a beautiful tool called genetic brain profiling, which is offered by Dr. Annette Martins. And during lockdown, I was fortunate enough to be trained by her. So this is it's a wonderful tool that has been around for the last 40 years in South Africa. And she uses it predominantly in education. But what it gives you insight into is, how you receive, perceive, process, and act on information, or the world around you, right? So your genetic brain profile is already, it's already established in utero. In fact, 9 weeks in utero, and it's because it's all about the fight or flight response, right? So it's all about survival. So by the time you are born, your preference is already there, and it's not something that changes over your lifetime. So it's very powerful. It gives people lovely insight into how they process information and how they deal with stress as well. So I've used that quite extensively, and I've branched that. I've created not just one-on-one engagements, but I've actually put together a program where I can take an entire team through the process, and they can get to understand themselves better as well as each other by just knowing, how do they receive and perceive information, and what happens to them under stress. Because when we're stressed, the physiology within ourselves changes, right? There's a change in the way that we perceive and receive information. And you'll find that, sometimes you are standing in front of a crowd and you need to speak, and all of a sudden you're feeling massive anxiety because of this, this talk that you need to have, and you forget your words, so that's what happens. The brain changes under stress. So that's been lovely. That's kind of the second part of my business that then morphed. And then the third part was the HR consulting. And what I'm finding is that there are smaller businesses that don't have HR in place, that need, some guidance with regards to HR. And I feel that, obviously there's basic principles that you need to have in place within any organization or any company, even if it is only for 20 people. So there's been a need to come and assist these smaller businesses with just, what are the basic HR practices and policies and procedures that we need to have in place. And I think that my view with this engagement is not just about giving them, a starter pack to go, okay, here's here's your basics. My view is always from an advisory perspective is to look at the business holistically, So usually the foot in the door with the client in terms of this is those policies and those practices and so forth. But once I start engaging with them on a more regular basis, I can then, start to understand their culture a little bit better. And so the experience and exposure that I've had over the last 20 years being in leadership and within HR, I think that one of the benefits that I bring is a very pragmatic approach to the way that we lead people. So those are the three parts to my business, and that's how it's morphed over the last 2.5 years. And I started off as a one-man show working for various consultancy businesses, and I've now grown in the sense that I've got additional associates helping me with work coming in, which is great because collectively as a team we're also just creating a new path. And so I'm open, I'm open to the space, and I'm open to what's going to present itself. And whereas when I started, I was very fixed on, I'm just going to do leadership development. 2.5 years later, I'm going, okay, this is interesting. Let's give it a go. Why not? Because if it adds value, then let's do it.
Yeah. And I mean, what I'm hearing you say as well is you've been completely customer centric in terms of looking at what your customers need and serving your customers. I think that sometimes the mistake that aspiring entrepreneurs make is that they make the entire entrepreneurial journey about themselves and what they feel customers should be wanting and the services that clients should be needing. But if you just sit down and listen to your client and actually listen to what they need, you're in so much better position to deliver what actually going to add value.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just wonderful to work with different customers and clients as well, because, they've got their own story and they've got their own requirements, and they help you evolve. This is the beauty of running your own business, is that your clients give you feedback. They tell you when you don't get things right, which is great. So another principle that I live by is that there's no such thing as failure. There's only feedback, and that's been hugely helpful for me in terms of just going out there and not needing to be perfect, that it's actually just, it's progress. And it's about, learning from that process as opposed to just delivering an end product. And your clients help you with that. They're great. They're amazing at just saying, well, let's think of it in a different way, because you can come up with a solution and they're like, well, actually, I need a little bit more of this, and so you customize it and you change it. And yeah, it's very exciting. It's very exciting.
It does sound so. And so talk to me about the other aspects of your business, because, sometimes we get so involved in the solutions that we provide in clients that we forget that there's also a business to run, and that there's also the harder side, if I can put it that way, around finances, around, regulatory reporting and compliance. And I hear you say that from a project delivery and from a capability perspective, you've broadened your skills and brought in associates, but how do you manage all the other aspects of your business?
So one of the things that I've invested in is a service provider from a marketing perspective, just to help me build my brand in the background. And it's the decision that I made is that that's not my area of expertise and skill. And so I'm going to outsource that, because I wanted to continue creating a brand and a presence on social media platforms. And this it's been a good investment in terms of money spent, because I'm getting new leads, and I'm getting new business from the posts that I'm putting out on social media, from people that I don't know. But what it's assisting my business in particular with is that the network that I've built over the last 20 years are seeing my posts on social media, And as a result of that, and the work that I've done with them previously in corporate, they're reaching out and they're saying, oh, wow, I see that you've been around for a while. You've done this, seen a couple of posts. And so, we'd like to talk to you. So that's one aspect that I grappled with initially to say, should I invest or not? You're always busy as an entrepreneur. You're continuously busy. So, yeah, I basically run pretty much everything else from, engaging with clients, going out, selling. And this is it's a constant thing, growing relationships or making sure that those relationships are kept intact. And so that happens in the background all the time. From a finance perspective, I have a wonderful accountant that looks after, that aspect. Again, it's not something that I want to do. I don't want to do my own returns. And I just, who is it? DeMartini says, outsource your lower priorities, like the things that are sitting on, your list of lower priorities, and focus on your higher priorities or higher values. So it's not that, the administration of the finances is not important, but that's not where I want to spend my time and energy on. So,
let the specialists do what the specialists do.
Exactly. And in between, Sean, it's a constant development and growth of self all the time.
Yeah. So
I think the one thing that I would love more of is time, because there's just so much to do. So that's there's never a dull moment. I've got to intentionally take a break and intentionally switch my laptop off, because I could literally work 24/7, which is not great in terms of balance,
It's not.
Yeah.
But I mean, in those first few years of being an entrepreneur and the startup phase, as I call it, or as it's known, it is intense. It is all consuming, and what I can tell you is that it does pass. And that, your business will enter the next phase of evolution and the next phase and the next phase. It's like life, it's like having a business is like having a child. You watch the child grow through its different phases. And the more you put in, the more you get out. And it's equally challenging in certain ways as well, I must say.
Yeah.
And Eunice, it's a remarkable story. And I think the concept of leadership development is something that is just, I don't want to say not well understood, but I do want to say that it is something that is not appreciated at the level that it should be. Because leadership development is a core component of any business, whether it's a startup, whether you're running 10 people or it's a massive corporate. Having the ability for leaders to be aligned around a shared understanding and a shared purpose of the organization, and leading the people, as in I walk in front, and they come along with shared values and shared intent and shared touch just doesn't happen the way it should happen. And I think that it's a great shame that a lot of people and a lot of organizations don't invest more in leadership development. It's not just an HR tick box exercise. It should be core to promotion.
And that's why the leadership program that I specifically work with, I think, is exceptionally powerful, because it's not just about a theoretical, an academic view of leadership. What we work with in particular is people's intent. Okay, so for an individual to show up as a leader, all right, and for an individual to consistently enable the people reporting into them and the people that they look after, there has to be a fundamental shift inside to go, am I here to set this person up for success, or am I here to set myself up for success? And I think that's why many leadership programs fail, or the traction in terms of leadership maybe doesn't happen, because you're learning a number of tools, which is great. They're academic. They work if you apply them. But when the pawpaw hits the fan and you need to, face the music, at that point, it's a moment of truth. Do you stand up, and do you step into courage and risk yourself because it's the right thing to do. And you would do that, if your intent and your deeper motive was about the other person, and it was the right thing to do. Because this analogy that you pull through in terms of building your business, and it's like a child, leadership is pretty similar. Okay, so you're the bigger person, and as the bigger person, you need to teach, you need to enable, you need to grow, you need to discipline, so that those individuals reporting into you become successful. Just like your child needs, your objective is to create a successful adult. And so the correlation between leadership and parenting is very similar, except with parenting, you are completely unconditional, right? With your children, you're like, well, I'll go the extra mile and I'll stay up. And so within leadership, it's that mind shift change as well. What am I here for? Am I here to set them up for success? And setting them up for success at times means taking appropriate action. It might mean having a courageous conversation. It might mean saying to them, look, this is not the space for you. So it's not just about the care and the love and the development and I can give you whatever you need in order to make you happy and feel great. It's about the hard part as well. So yeah, I think that for me that's the key that unlocks the success.
And it's also about the lead, and I quote the book here, but it's also about the lead without the title. Yes. Everyone has the ability to be a leader in their own right, and display qualities of leadership. And absolutely. I think that it's that whole concept of as above, so below. And as you see your leaders modeling the certain behaviors, so that the people below start to emulate those behaviors, and so it goes.
They do, absolutely. So as human beings, we have something called mirror neurons, and we mirror what we see. So when leaders display, behavior that is with integrity, and they have difficult conversations and they're consistent, they create a space of safety, and that is then emulated and cascaded into the rest of the organization. And, when people see leaders throwing others under the bus, whoever it is, and they start to do the same. So, yeah, absolutely.
Eunice, I cannot believe we're out of time. Can you believe it?
I can't believe it.
I actually looked up at the time now, and I'm thinking to myself, my goodness, it feels like we haven't even started. Yeah. Eunice Liefferink, we need to have a second part, and I say that to almost all our guests, but in your case, it's like I feel like we haven't even scratched the surface, and we're already out of time. I've been asking everyone this question to summarize the episodes recently. So I'm not gonna spare you as well. I'm gonna ask you this question as well.
Yeah.
Your daughter comes to you and she says to you, Mom, give me one piece of advice, one tip that from your life that I can use to make myself successful in life. What would that be? And I catch you off guard there. Hey?
You caught me off guard.
I catch everyone off guard with this one. So what would your response be?
It's to her. Wow. So I would say to her that what I mentioned earlier, which is my beautiful, beautiful darling. Just know that in life there are always going to be challenges, and the one piece of advice is that there is no such thing as failure. There's only feedback, because if you can shift your mindset to that, you'll step into courage. You'll try things. You'll do things. You'll receive feedback. Okay, you'll see feedback as a gift, and you won't sit in it and you won't dwell on it. So I think it's that. Okay, but perhaps first and foremost is that if you can live a life where you can look around you and you can see what you've got and you can live in a space of gratitude, okay, you're going to have an amazing life, regardless of the consequences or the things that are happening around you. So yeah, one piece of advice is so little, but it's those two golden nuggets that I would say: just never give up, live in gratitude, And there's no such thing as failure. There's only feedback.
Yeah,
and go for it.
I must say, I really, again, I love you with your outlook on life. It's so inspiring, it's so motivating, and it's so refreshing. So yeah, I look forward to chatting to you again, Eunice. Thank you so much. It's been my absolute privilege to spend this time with you. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for telling us about your business, and we look forward to speaking again.
Lovely. Thank you, Sean. I really appreciate it. It was wonderful. Thanks for the opportunity.
Great. Good people, we've come to the end of the show. Even though it's a sad ending, we will meet with Eunice again. My friends, you know the drill. It's an afternoon. We've almost time to go home. Take it easy. Have a good evening. And if you can do one thing only. And that's stay inspired. Cheers.